Welcome back to another episode of Leaving a Rich Legacy. I am your host, Jessica Rich, and I'm super excited to have my guest here today, Micah, to share a little bit about the amazing things that she's doing and really pour her wisdom into us and her knowledge and experience. And as you all know, this podcast really is a love letter to my younger self, and it's an opportunity to talk about topics that we don't often discuss in the Black and Brown community. And
Mm,
this is just an opportunity for us to shed light on those topics, but also experience, really deep diving into certain topics, being vulnerable, but then also hearing from individuals that are making an impact in the community. So, Micah, I am so excited to have you here.
thank you. Thank you for having me.
So you and I connected through a mutual friend, and this is one of those situations where community is everything. But also, most importantly, there are so many people that are doing the work. And I would love for you just to share a little bit about yourself. Who is Micah?
Mm. Who is Micah? That's a good question. So I answer that in two parts, right? Because people, when you ask that question, they think of the roles they play. But the role that you play is not who you are, right? So the role that I play, I'm a wife, I'm a mother, I'm a friend, I'm a sister, I'm a life coach. But who is Micah? I would say, it's my little tagline. I'm a fearless and commanding presence, divinely chosen to help others navigate their transition.
Hmm. So I love that you broke that. It's two parts
Mm,
because you are right. And I'm sure you see it in the work that you do. Some people do not know how to separate the
mm.
hats that they wear to be able to define who they are. I have to ask, at what point did you realize that's two different responses?
Mm. I would say when my children turned 5, 6, so that would have been not too long ago. They're 11 now, right? And I found it through my process, if you will. I figured that out in my process, my healing journey. So
Okay.
not that long ago.
So you discovered that, which I'm sure you probably have a lot of opportunity to see others who may struggle with being able to define themselves.
Mm.
And you talked about being a coach. So what led you to becoming a coach? Like what inspired you to become a life coach?
I think that when I look back over my life, I've always been a coach. And when I say always, little youngling, right? I think I've always been a coach, didn't understand what it was clearly. But my transition into the work and actually getting certified, I started off as a fertility coach because I struggled with IVF. So I started in that lane. And because that process, it was like I didn't know anybody who had gone through that process before me. I had one or two friends. And so I was like, okay, well, this feels like a lane that I'm supposed to be showing up in because people who look like me don't have this experience or the circle. Did that, and it just didn't feel right to charge people who are already paying $1 million to make babies or try to. And so it kind of evolved or transitioned into a life coach, and that being a service I offer as part of, right? But that journey again probably started in that area of healing and when I was finding myself. Um, and like I said, when the kids were about 4, and I kind of coached myself through some things. I went and found some help because clearly I wasn't getting it right. But it was in that journey that it's like, okay, there's something about healing and growing yourself. We always call it growing up, but it's growing yourself. There's something in that process that we all don't tap into in the way that we could to elevate. I would say, I don't like the word faster because you're going to elevate when you're supposed to elevate, right? I don't like that word, but take full advantage of the process. And so it was that work that I was doing for myself that shined the light. And it's like, oh, wait a minute. As I was discovering who I was even further and evolving, it's like, oh, these are these little things that have happened in your life that have shown up as a coach, but you didn't know them to be a coach. Let's go help some people be great.
So you what I hear, and you talked about healing more than once now.
Listen.
And, in our community, sometimes, we don't always promote going to get the assistance, right?
Mm,
Whether that's a coach, that's a therapist. We have an opportunity to really, really embrace those resources. So, through your healing journey, how did you feel like you really discovered your purpose? You talked about,
mm,
you're looking at pieces of I'm already a
mhm.
coach, but was there like a defining moment or something that happened that the light bulb really went off?
Sparked it. I would say yes. And I think not only did my healing journey kind of tip it off, but I identified that there were multiple transitions I was going through. Sometimes all at the same time, sometimes sequentially, right? But for me, I think the pivotal moment was, so when we had children, I had made up in my mind what kind of mother I wanted to be. And in doing that, I was all in motherhood. Nothing else mattered. Now I had a job, I had a husband, and a whole bunch of other stuff, but I was focused on mom. In that process, I completely lost who I was. I woke up one day and was like, okay, so I am a mom. Remember those roles versus who you are? I was engulfed in mother, but lost Micah. And so, in that healing journey and finding myself, that's when the light bulb went off for me that, oh, this is just another transition. And I need to know how to navigate the transition. And now that I'm navigating this transition, my experience is something that I've seen several places, including my own family, where women, specifically my demographic is women 35 to 50, but women 35 to 50, these are those years where you are trying to figure it out and not knowing really which way to go or feeling stuck. And so that's what for me was the pivotal moment that was like, this is a lane that I'm supposed to walk in. This is my purpose. And I knew it was my purpose because of how hard it hits. Because when it hits, baby, it's like I ran into a brick wall. Like, oh, okay, because God will say something and he'd be like, I hear you. I got you tomorrow. But this particular moment, he was like, no, right now. And recently, hi, there was a situation where, and when I say recently, another pivotal moment, my husband and I have experienced some ebbs and flows. Mhm. So there's been infidelity in our relationship. And in that was where the shift for me was from fertility coach to this life coach space, where it was like I had to walk through yet another transition and I had to identify how I was going to show up and what I was going to be in that moment. And thinking again, I wasn't the only person this happened to. I've heard several stories, but the way that we're taught to move through them, it wasn't the way I wanted to move through my situation. So I was like, how can I be that example for someone else?
So I would appreciate just you being transparent and sharing about your personal experiences and you specifically talking about transitions. So can you share for those who are watching some examples of
Mhm.
transitions to kind of tie that in?
Absolutely. There's so many, and some we don't even think about. So the obvious one that I spoke about, motherless to a mother or childless to having a child. There's even transition, and I don't think people understand this either. There's transition in wanting to be a mother, but not being able to be a mother, right? There's a transition because it changes your thought process the whole bit. Career change, change in relationship, whether it be I'm married and I'm choosing not to be, or I want to be married and I'm moving into that. Personal transition. Perhaps you're transitioning from past trauma, grief. So there's so many facets of transition. It could be relocating physically and mentally. Girl, I could keep going. But those are some examples. Those are just
Okay.
some.
Well, I think it's important because to your point, sometimes we don't realize like this is a transition. And life is moving so fast that we don't capture that moment or really sit in it. So I appreciate you sharing that. Now you talked about your audience, like your
Hmm.
target audience is 35 to 50, and even how you had to really focus on who you are and the changes that you went through, even through motherhood. If you
Mm,
think about society, by 30, I feel like I was supposed to know who I was, who I am, have the job, be married, have kids, so many things. But, we're all not there because it's a journey. So, why is it important for us to take that time to discover who we are?
So I think it's important to understand who you are because in knowing who you are, that gives you that clarity and direction in where you're going. And I put that in air quotes, right? I think it's important to know who you are because in knowing who you are, there is a level of confidence that comes with that. In knowing who you are, there are boundaries that you will set and not just set, but enforce. Because I've set several boundaries in my lifetime, not necessarily enforce them, right? I think in knowing who you are, um, it gives space for growth, self awareness, self acceptance, right? There's more reasons why that's important, but in my experience, knowing who you are, that confidence, that direction, purpose, it's tied to all of that. And if you don't know who you are fitting in a role or a title that someone else owns, and you're only going to be you can't grow in that. It's not yours. Just saying.
It's not yours, and that's an easy way to get frustrated, angry, resentment, so many things that can come with that. So, from your experience in the work that you're doing with either coaching or personal,
Mm,
what can we do to discover who we are? Like, how do
mm.
we get there?
It's baby steps. It's one step at a time. I think it is what I call self inventory. What are the things that you love? What are the things that you're passionate about? Get to know you, right? Because I think a lot of times we grow up in spaces, I know me for specifically, you grow up in spaces where people have an idea of who you're supposed to be. And that idea is pushed on you, and everything that you do is connected to that idea in some cases, right? Well, this is who they said I was supposed to be, so let me do the things. But get to know who you are. Who do you want to be? You get to decide that. Who you are is a definition that you create for yourself. And it requires you to do some self reflection. Like I said, my self audit is self reflection. It's journaling for people who are like, oh my God, I don't want to journal. That's fine. Voice record it. But if you do these things, if you look at my journal, because I'm one of those, it's not going to be poetic. Might be some cuss words. I talk to my journal how I talk to myself, right? But that's how you, and then look at that and revisit that. Again, try new things. We get so stuck in, girl, I don't do that. I don't swim. I don't eat sushi. Like, try it. You don't know what you don't do till you do it, right? Try new things. Um, be open, be compassionate. And I think people, when you say be compassionate with yourself, sometimes people don't understand what that looks like, but compassion for self is connected to self love, which is different than self care. Self care supports self love. Um, but I think people don't understand what that looks like. And it looks like understanding this is who I am, this is how I show up, and accepting all the parts of you, the good, bad, not just the good ones, the bad ones, the indifferent ones, right? But in really finding who you are, it's going to require you to take some small steps. Um, like I said, try new things, heal. That would be the first thing I say do. Because again, in that healing journey, you unlock so many doors that you never had walked through to even know that that was a piece of you, right? So for me, I would say healing is first in that journey.
Right. So, healing,
Oh, I'm gonna
discovering
keep
what you
saying
like.
that. You're gonna keep hearing me say that for the rest of this little
I
shindig.
love it. I love it because we have to do the work. And I know a lot of people have asked me before, what is the work? Well, the journey
Hmm.
looks different for all of us. So my work is going to look different than your work, but healing is a part of that. Is a part of that for sure. So you talked about like try new things and like knowing what you like. And
Hmm.
one thing that I've been very intentional about over the last 4 years is like learning how to love Jessica, like Jessica, date Jessica. There's so many travel solo. There's a lot of things I've been very intentional about. A lot of people don't know how to do that, Micah.
Mhm.
And as a mother and as a wife, how do you invest in Micah when it comes to trying new things?
Mm.
And how did you discover what you like? Because at that point, it's a transition for you as well, when it came to those specific roles.
So as a mother and a wife, and I still struggle with this as a mother, I'll just put that disclaimer out there because when I do go do these things for myself and it doesn't include my children, I'm like, oh, she's deadbeat. However, self-compassion, right? I don't need to be with them all the time. I don't need, and truth be told, they probably don't want me around all the time. But how I was able to do that, I actually sat down and had a conversation with my husband. I explained these are the things I need, not asking for permission, right? Communicating what the need was and expressing what life would look like going forward because it's going to change for him too. My kids understand. Mommy has certain days that she has to herself, and y'all go like we have a schedule Monday and Wednesday. Daddy got y'all. That's my day. And then taking time with those Mondays and Wednesdays and their weekends that I take too. But with that time, I'm going out and doing things that I want to do. It may be with friends, it may be by myself. Me and my girlfriends every year, we do a girlfriends weekend, right? So our mutual friend, we do a girlfriends weekend. That feeds my soul because I want to be connected to my people. It can't be all about family. Love y'all, but love me too, right? And then also that self care piece. I think a lot of times when people hear self care, it's hard to register, especially if you're a tomboy like me. I wasn't into the nails and the hair and all the things, right? So when I hear people say self care and that's what they titled it as, you get to define that too. But I had to learn that. Like, okay, I tried the nail thing, that ain't gonna work. I did the hair, but y'all see how long this is. So that's I don't want to sit in the shop for 4 hours. That's not self care to me, right? But for me, self care is my therapy sessions. It's my sessions with my coach. It's my doctor's appointments, making sure that all the things are working the way they're supposed to work so that I can go enjoy. So for me, it was really just setting a foundation, putting together a plan, having a conversation with my family to understand this is what life is going to look like, and I need your support in that. And I got buy in. I think sometimes we're afraid to ask because we think the answer is no. But like I said, I wasn't asking for permission, it was a request.
Love that. And also just sounds like you know how to honor yourself and what you need, even though you have those roles. You are a mother, you are a wife. But communication is what I heard you say is important to be able to do that. But also, self care is different for each of us. You said I get to define what self care looks like for me. Self care for me is not going to be the same for you. And I think a lot of
Mhm.
people struggle with that because they see on social media self-care is spending $300-400 and
Girl.
every time you go out, or it has to be brunch and happy hour, and it's so many more things
Mhm.
than that. So you talked about, when it comes to really pouring into yourself is what I heard. You have a coach and you have
Mhm.
a therapist.
Mhm.
And you talked about healing quite a few times. So how does a lack of healing, us not taking that initiative to heal, affect us when it comes to navigating the transitions of our life?
So the lack of healing affects the transitions. If you're held back by those things that you're not healed from, you only gonna go so far. It's too heavy. You can't carry it. And some things ain't meant to go where you going. So guess what? If they can't go, you can't go until you let them go, right? so so healing is important for that reason alone, and it's like you're only going to be able to go places that you have allowed yourself, the limitations you set on yourself in healing or lack of healing is a limitation in my mind. Somebody else might think differently, but that's Micah's perspective, right? So that healing journey is so important because everything is attached to it. Again, Micah's perspective, Micah's opinion. In that healing journey, you are learning what your strengths are. You're learning that I am stronger than I thought I was. In the examples I gave, baby, baby. Let me just tell you, right? Because I was that one. I wish he would. Nope, that ain't me, and we ain't never. And if he do, it's deuces. And here we are. still thriving and moving through, right? But it took that process to show me some things about me that I believe I needed to see, right? And until you go through that, you're not really going to understand what your capacity is for all things. So I believe healing is the foundation of your self discovery, because all of us have some painful past, whether it, because people use the word trauma, and we can use that word, but everyone doesn't resonate with that word. So painful life events, we'll call it that. There's something that has shaped you, possibly in a negative way, that you've held on to. Some of us know it and we see it clearly, and some of us are just, it was what it was. I've stuffed it down. It's going to bubble up, and it's going to bubble up at the darndest time when you're trying to move through and propel because you haven't healed it, right? So think about at work. There are certain people that rub me the wrong way at work because it triggers something in me. But if I don't know that about myself, it's going to sabotage me everywhere I go. But because I know who I am and I'm self-aware, when that happens, I can process it. Oh no, this isn't them, this is me. This is my stuff. Let me process. Why do I feel this way? Why am I triggered? Why are these the things? So healing is, for me, the focal point of truly understanding and building and defining who you are. Because again, that journey is going to show you so much: what you like, what you don't like, um, what your strengths and weaknesses are, and again, what your capacity is for love, for life, for laughter, for all of the things.
Capacity is one of my favorite words for anybody who is close to me, because you are right. Healing will teach you what type of capacity you have. And I think it also helps you to be compassionate for others about their capacity,
Mm-hmm.
because we don't all have the same capacity. So understanding why some people may respond or lack of the way they do to not trigger you based on what someone else's behavior. So I love that you spoke on that. And I hear that healing has really helped you most recently with a life transition, specifically being able to navigate through that. So is there anything that you would say to an individual who is struggling when it
Mm.
comes to starting that process?
I would say take small steps. First, acknowledge, right? If you're struggling or you're afraid or you're hesitant, acknowledge it. Don't shoo it away, right? Because you can't fix what you don't acknowledge. So acknowledge it and accept it. It is what it is. Take small steps. A small accomplishment in that journey will make you feel like you have climbed Mount Everest, and you're going to want more of it, right? It's going to trigger something in your body like, ooh, girl, give me more. I want to do again. Give me another thing to do. Find community, a support system. Because here's the thing: in taking this journey and navigating your self discovery, there are people who have decided who you are for you, and they ain't going to be comfortable with that. So it might require you to separate from those spaces and find community elsewhere that supports this new journey that you're on. Um, Someone who you can ask questions and bounce ideas off. The other thing I would say is be patient. I think we said this earlier. Your journey is yours. And social media have you believing that you're supposed to be a millionaire in 2.2 seconds because you got 10,000 likes in 20 minutes, right? Horrible scenario or example, but that's the reality. It's your journey is yours. For some, it may be a year. For others, it may be 20.
Can you elaborate on community? And
Mm,
the reason why I ask is because, I've interacted with a lot of individuals in coaching, um, personally, that feel like, at a certain age, we no longer are at a place where we can meet new people and we can connect.
mm,
And you and I met through someone who I was connected with. So look at the way that I was able to build a community with you. So can you
mhm.
elaborate on that? More about what community could look like, but why it's so important to be open to it.
So community could look like a bunch of things. Community could be a Facebook group. I actually am connected to, there's a women of color in my city. They have a Facebook group. These are random people who meet up at places in Columbus, Ohio on random days. Um, it could be a group of friends, mutual friends. It could be a social networking event. It could be a coach, right? Coach is part of community. Therapist is part of community. Group coaching, even. A lot of times when you do the group coaching sessions and it's focused on a specific area, you understand that everybody that's coming in this call or in this group is coming for the same reason I'm coming for. That's community. Um, Community can be friends, it can be sisters, it can be brothers, but it's community to me is a group of folks, and it ain't got to be a big group. Let's be clear, right? Community don't mean 20 people. If that's your thing, do it. But just some people that you have access to that are helping support where you're trying to go and what you're trying to do. And why that's important, because like we said, the journey can be a little like, ooh, this is daunting. It can be daunting or scary, if you will. So having that group or that support as you're navigating your new normal, your transition is, I think it's vital, because we don't do anything alone. And for those of us who say we are self-made, okay, right? But we don't, there's nothing that God created us to be in community. So how do you navigate? And here's the other thing. In navigating community, ideally in your community, someone has already been where you're trying to go. And there's somebody behind you. So imagine if you're in that community and you're continually building that, imagine what that community could be because you're in it. I'm just saying.
No, you're right. I think we don't realize, one, community can be a number of things. I'm happy you pointed out that community is not 20, 30 people.
Mm-mm.
Community can be one individual. So let me ask you this, as a mother, and you have an opportunity to go through the healing journey, and just based on the work you do, I'm going to say change some of the patterns that maybe before you, right? Because now you've done
Mm-hmm.
the work and you have this different awareness. Why is it important to make sure your children are able
Mm.
to define who they are earlier, and it's not at a place, well, I say this is journey. So, right, knowing who you are at 18 and as a kid, and then in your 30s could look different. But why is it so important for you as a mother to be able to help them along that journey?
Well, I think for me, it's important because I want them to your point, I want them to understand early, right? I don't know that I understood I ain't gonna say I didn't understand it because I am who I was then. But I think when you understand it at a younger age, there is less mess that you tolerate. When you're clear about who you are, remember we said when you're clear about who you are, you got values, core values, you got boundaries, you got standards, you've got a direction, you've got a plan. If my kids understand who they are now at 11, and it's going to evolve, right? So, yes, you know who you are at 11, but that's guiding you in every decision you make. It is based on who you are, not who people want you to be, not who people think you're supposed to be, not who you saw on social media and want to be, who you are. And if I can instill that in you now, as you evolve, you carry that with you because it will change. It could change, right? And that's okay. But if I'm teaching them that now, when it does change, there's no loss or confusion or, oh my God, this is part of my process. This is part of my journey. And there's a level of self awareness that they will have that helps them navigate the world, I think, different than our generation was able to. Because we were told who we were. You're a kid, stay in a kid's place and don't talk until you smoke. Like, well, daggone, right? But how I raise my children is no, you have a voice. Use it respectfully, but you have it. So that looks different for them. Now they can advocate for themselves, right? I'm there to support, but they understand, oh, if I got a grievance, I can speak about my grievance. I don't have to run to mama. I can do that because that's mine.
So with that, and just in general, not just for children, but knowing who you are, like you said, there's this core values, you have a voice, you're not gonna put up with mess. How do you navigate with others who are not there? Right? So when you've done the work, sometimes there can be some tension when you're interacting with folks who haven't, or those boundaries come into place. So how can we navigate that?
So I say this all the time: when you change, the people around you will change, whether that be mentally or physically, right? So a lot of times when you show up different, it forces other people to show up different for you, or they got to go out of the way. Like, right. So when I say when you change, the people around you would change, that's a physical change. Like, you know what? This is no longer serving me. We're not aligned. And I don't have to subject myself to your unhealed space. If that's a boundary, I don't have to cross or let you cross that boundary. So you know what? Perhaps this is a season that we just don't participate. That's for the folks that can't accept the change. And then there are those who see it and they're motivated and intrigued and inquiring. What you doing? Girl, you showing up different. What you been doing? Oh, sis, let me tell you, here it is, right? And I've actually had that experience with a few people who, as I was going through my healing journey, inquired about, well, you look different, you showing up different. And they went to therapy themselves. Like, so for me, it's I'm not compromising who I am because you're uncomfortable with it. I don't what they say, I don't have to dim my light so you can shine or something like that, right? Like I'm just not. The work that I did, that's too much work. No, ma'am. What they say, get right or get left. So I don't want to say that to be, crass or so brazen, but at the same time, when you know yourself and you're clear about your boundaries, when you encounter people who are uncomfortable with who you are, that's a you problem. That ain't a me problem. You didn't do your work, and I can't do it for you.
Right. So we got to unpack that because there are a lot of people who are going through life dimming their light for family, siblings, their parents, friends, and coworkers, and they are afraid to show up as themselves and who they are, even if they've done the work, because of how other people will perceive them or how other people
Mm.
feel. So, how do we respond to that? I would say I don't respond because, like you said, that's a you problem. But we know
Mhm.
there's a lot of people that are putting a lid on themselves because of that. So, one, did you ever experience it? So, if you did, kind of share how did you
Mhm.
overcome it? And then also, how can we navigate that if we're struggling with it?
Okay. So I did actually encounter that in corporate space. Who Micah is who Micah is. If y'all see me, this is how I look at work now, right? But back in the day, I thought that I had to show up a certain way to be acceptable to corporate, right? Blonde hair on a black girl in corporate America, was that gonna fly? And I've always loved to color my hair. I was like, no, let's do the corporate thing and be buttoned up. I like to be a little bit stylish, even though it's going to be corporate. And so I did kind of, and that's just physical stuff. But I'm in IT, it is a white male dominated industry. So even in that, it's like I had to show up, I'm direct. I had to minimize that because it wasn't accepted in the workplace. Like, who is this? Like, who are you? Now, you can talk to me this way, but you don't expect me because then it's, oh, she's aggressive, right? Versus, no, I'm just passionate in the same way that you are. And so I kind of did walk through my corporate space, dimming my light, not really saying a whole bunch, just sitting back. I'll wait until you ask me a question. But then I thought about it, and I had an experience with a boss who we didn't jive, and I didn't trust him. And I can't remember what it was that he said to me, but it was the way that he talked to me. And we were in a one on one, and we actually in a meeting, and he addressed me in a way that would have been wrong if I did it. So when the meeting was over and afterward, I had a one-on-one conversation with him. Like, so what we're not doing, like, there's a way for you to communicate with me in a room or outside of the room, but that's not it. And it's never acceptable, and don't do it again. And it was in that moment that I'm like, if I'm going to show up, I'm going to show up who I am. And if you don't like it, you like if you're gonna fire me, you're gonna fire me because I was Micah, not because I was Micah pretending to be who you wanted me to be, right? Um, how you get over that, I think it is really understanding who you are. And that's the root of it. And being okay with all the parts of who you are. For instance, I understand that I'm direct. I also understand that everybody cannot receive that. Had an experience today, as a matter of fact. But in understanding that about myself, I'm not offended when someone points it out. I'm not offended when someone says, hey, that's how you move, but it makes me uncomfortable, and here are all the reasons why. That's cool. I'm still direct, but maybe we'll package it in a way that you can digest it, right? But I'm not changing who I am, but I'm acknowledging that you need something different from me that I might be able to give you, I might not. But so the question is, how do you move through going from dimming your light to just walking around shining your light? I think it's just owning you, owning who you are. When you own who you are, it's easy to walk in that light because you're not, because a lot of times, although we say we dimming the light for other people, we're really dimming it for ourselves. And that's the facts because we feel some type of way about it. Yeah, you said it bothered you, but it's really me like, oh, well, now you've internalized that. So you're really dimming the light for yourself. God created you to be great. Be great.
So we talked about the corporate space, a dimming your light, but I got to ask you this part as you were explaining. So you're a coach.
Mm-hmm.
I'm a coach. And we met through someone else who doesn't do, I'm not gonna say similar work, but has a presence, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like you have always been super supportive. When I first met you, you're like, okay, so what you doing? What's
Facts.
next? And you've always been that way. But when I meet a lot of new people, especially coaches, it's almost as if there's not enough room for all of us, right? Um, I have an idea of this, but I want you to share because I meet so many women that I'm like, I want you to win. And I feel
Mm-hmm.
like that is the relationship we have. How can I support you? It's
Mm-hmm.
never me trying to take away. So for individuals who experience that, what would be encouraging words to overcome that? Because some people feel like this relationship between even you and I is like, oh, that don't happen often. But for
Mm-hmm.
me, it
It
does.
does, right. And so the question is, how do you overcome those spaces where I say crabs in a barrel, the crabs in a barrel mentality. There's not enough for everyone. I think it goes back to building community, right? When you are in those spaces and you see this individual who's like, ooh, that's there's not enough for both of us to eat. I can't tell you the secrets, right? Gatekeepers, that's what I call them, girl. I can't find my words. Gatekeepers, right? I think it's acknowledging that and understanding that and not internalizing it, right? It's not personal. And again, it's a you problem. That individual, and I would argue that if that person is coaching, they probably shouldn't. Because if you have the mentality, a scarcity mentality, then how do you coach people to prosperity? And I don't mean prosperity in money, in life in general, right? So how you navigate that specifically for me, it's my community, who I surround myself with. Light attracts light. So if I'm connected to light, it's inevitable that you are going to connect me to more light or vice versa, right? So I make sure that I'm connected with people who resemble or resonate my values. But again, I know who I am and I know what my values are. So I know how to recognize it in other people. I know I'm going to keep taking y'all back to who you are. I'm sorry. But
No.
that's real. That's how you navigate it because it's, again, if you don't know who you are, people can show up like a sheep in, or a fox, not a fox, a wolf in sheep's clothing, and you can't see through it because you don't know at the core of who you are what's going on. And technically, if you acting like somebody else, you a wolf in sheep's clothing also, right? If you're pretending to be something because somebody told you to be that, it may not look malicious, but it still ain't right because it ain't you. So yeah, so I would say the way that I navigate that is ensuring that I am authentically me and I'm true to who I am and I'm standing firm on my core values, which is my foundation. And in doing that, I'm attracting who I am. And who I'm attracting is attracting who they are. Right. And so my community, to your point, I don't see that problem because my community doesn't include people with that mentality because I don't have
Nail on the head. So and that's what I knew that you would get to, but to hear it that when you know who you are, you're going to attract that. Even if it's a stranger, right? You're going to be able to pick up if it's aligned with who you are, your journey,
it.
your purpose, where you're going, and you're able to weed those individuals out sooner than later, right? If they're masking it or if the behavior doesn't align with
Hmm.
who you are. So I had to ask that because I just hear so many people think that this doesn't happen often. I'm like, no, I mean, a lot of coaches and we connect and we supporting one another. We
Hmm.
all have. There's an opportunity for all of us. So I'm happy you spoke on that.
But I will
Go
give you
ahead.
an example prior to me truly walking in my authenticity. So when I say transition, I suffered childhood trauma. As a child, I was molested, and I'm fully transparent. So sorry, but I was molested as a child. And so what I didn't know when I did my work or started my healing, what I didn't know is how I was showing up was abrasive and closed off, walled up, and that was my protection mechanism. But in my mind, this is who I am. I'm here for the smoke. I'm gonna get you before you get me. All of the things, right? But in having that mentality, guess who I'm attracting? But not understanding that that's what's happening. When I made the shift, I could visibly see the shift, if you will, in my interactions, in the people that I was connected to, in the people that flowed to me. It's like, oh, so I could see how someone with the there's not enough, again, you must not have healed from some things. Scarcity mindset usually is something that's set in us in younger days. And so there's some work that needs to be done in that space because you feel that way. And I can say that from my own experience. Yep, been there, done that.
So that's powerful, and I hope that that blesses someone because you do hear a lot of people who say, "This is who I am. I am just," and it's something could have triggered. And trauma, you said earlier, a lot of people don't resonate with that, but trauma looks different.
Hmm.
Trauma is, can be a number of different things, and if we always go through life saying this is just who I am, it is what it is, you can be pouring and bleeding on so many people because you are not identifying what is a result of that. And I think I can say that sometimes anger, right? Some people
Hmm.
just come off as angry and not even realizing and think that's just their attitude and their personality, when in reality, you're not pleasant to be around. But then also, if you did the work, you can see that shift
Hmm.
by tapping into it. So I really do hope whoever y'all replay that part because I think that's a huge part of me on my own journey. I seen a shift in some things, but others we use that this is just who I am. Is it?
And it's
Or
not.
you blocking your growth?
My therapist told me that's not who you are, it's how you show up. Those are two different things. And that clicked for me, like, oh, because at the core of who I was this sweet. I just wanted to be loved. I was a sweet little person. But I showed up like, where's the smoke? Who wanted, right? Because I'm trying to protect. And it's like, oh yeah, so I guess I'm not a little bia, if you will.
Right. One of the most powerful things one of my therapists shared with me is trauma and grief does not excuse someone to be mean or to treat people a certain way, right? We understand and we may have compassion for you, but that doesn't excuse certain behaviors because of your experience. And sometimes it takes that self-reflection to do the work to really prosper in growth and build community because you don't know who you
Mm-hmm.
blocking by how you can show up. So I appreciate I'm not surprised that you were very open and transparent. I expected nothing less, but it's something that we got to tap into when it comes to discovering who we are. So, Mike, I have a question for you. This is my
Sure.
favorite question of the podcast.
Okay.
But if you could have a conversation with younger Micah, what would you tell her?
If I could have a conversation with younger Micah, ooh, that's loaded. I would tell her that you are exactly who God created you to be. Everything that you go through, and I'm talking like I'm talking to her, everything that you go through in this journey is a tool for the next leg of the trip. I would tell her that, and I actually tell this to my children, the lesson is in the mistake. And it's okay that you made the mistake, just learn the lesson because those mistakes are stepping stones for where God is taking you. That's what I would tell. Ooh, chills. That's what I would tell her. Ooh, girl, that spoke to me. But yeah, I tell her you were created on purpose for a purpose. Honey, what else? I'll write her a book. I got some more stuff to tell her because you didn't trigger something in me. I got this. I'm gonna write this tonight. Yes, that's what
Yeah.
I would tell her.
I love that. And I love that you are carrying that, like you're already having that kind of conversation with your kids. You're saying like about the mistakes and getting the lesson from that. So powerful. All right, look, you say you like to journal, so I guess that's gonna be your what you
That's
doing
gonna be
tonight.
it.
But
Yeah.
so Micah, thank you so much for just like I said, being open and honest and really pouring into not only the audience, but me about just remembering why it's important to know who you are and how it really, really helps us through life transitions. So is there anything else that you would like to share that you didn't get an opportunity to share with us?
I just want to say for somebody who's out there watching, if you are hesitant in starting this journey, I would say that you are not watching this by accident because I don't believe anything happens on accident. It is divine purpose, and perhaps this was your ignition or your what you needed to move forward. So I would say take that step, and if you're afraid, do it scared. Baby steps. So if anybody's watching from the Columbus, Ohio area, September 28th, 2024, we will be having a the Power Within workshop where we are going to kind of work through and talk through the understanding of who you are and how reclaiming your power. So, and understanding who you are in power. So, come join us. I'll have it on my website, Micah Renee or Micah at MicahRenee.com. So, thank you so much, Jessica. It's always a pleasure. Always. So,
So one, super excited about your event on the 28th of September. And want to make sure I want to share because I was going to ask how can people connect with you. So you gave us your website,
mhm.
but are there any other platforms that we can connect with you?
Yeah, I'm most active on Facebook. So, and I'm gonna have to tell you what that is because Micah Renee Coaching. That's my tag on Facebook. Um, so yes, come check me out, Micah Renee Coaching. That's my handle on Facebook and Instagram, but I am more active on Facebook. So
Awesome. Well, I will be sure to include your website and also your social media handles. So for anyone who would like to connect with you about why it's important to be able to define who we are, but then also any other transitions in life, they'll have that information. So, Micah, like you said, it's always a pleasure. Thank you so much for joining me this evening. And I look forward to seeing you on September 28th.
yes, ma'am. You might see me before then because I might be down there the week before. But anyway, we'll talk about that.
All right, then. Well, thank you, lady. I look forward to connecting again in the future, as always.
Bye.